I got to ask you a question along those lines. Did you ever expect, if you were to go back 10 years, did you expect that we would see things develop as much as we are watching them develop right now?
No, because they're happening at lightning speed. What I, like I said, and I say it all the time, is we can't keep up. Now, you have an advantage. You're doing updates, particularly online, on almost daily, at least many times a week. And that helps. So some of us are doing our updates weekly, and others might do them even less frequently, but keeping up with what's happening, and then the shock factor of what's, we've already talked. I mean, if we could list 20 things that are shock factors, and we don't have time for that, but the point, artificial intelligence, Chat GPT, are you kidding? Tom, that could knock you out of the pastorate, because somebody's going to tell Chat GPT, give me a sermon on end times and Gog and Magog, and within 5 seconds there's the sermon.
Yeah.
So some of this is beyond stunning, and I think we can use it for good. We know the enemy and evil is using it for evil. And then we've got, are we going to get up in the next 2, 3 mornings? Will Benjamin Netanyahu have okay to strike on Iran? I think so. If not this week, I think in the next 2, 3 months. It takes our breath away. And you know what? That's good, because that reminds us that the hour is so late. We can't waste
Amen.
time. We've got to get the gospel out. We've got to bring guys like you to various meetings that we can further get the gospel and what we're talking about out, and encourage the wonderful verse, Hebrews 10, encourage one another. Look, you and I have just talked about some dark things, but our goal is really to encourage. Jesus is coming. He's coming any day. He's coming any minute. We might not even finish this presentation, but that's how quickly Jesus is coming. And I couldn't say that 30 years ago, but boy, I can say it today.
Oh, yeah. I think of what you were just talking about from Hebrews chapter 10, and encourage one another. And the writer of Hebrews says, and all the more as you see the day
All the
approaching.
more.
I think I'll put that in there for our time, that we
Exactly.
would see that. I mean, you look around everything. Jan, you've been doing this, as I mentioned, for decades. Just a little bit, I got to ask you this. How have you dealt with over the years the naysayers, the mockers? Because the majority of those come from people who claim to be within the church. The scoffers and the mockers. How is it you deal with that? Because a lot of our viewers, they deal with it within their families or within their friends or even within their own churches, because their pastors won't talk about these things.
Oh,
amen. Deal with it.
I was blessed to grow up in a church that talked about all these topics, and my church was somewhat tied to Dallas Seminary. It was in Minneapolis. We provided Dallas Seminary with Stan Toussaint. He was going to my church. All of that was by God's design, so that I, growing up, could hear what the things we're talking. You get the emails, I get the emails. I visited every church in my community to see if they'll talk about these issues, and they won't, and they approached the pastor, and no, he won't. So I had that advantage growing up. And I think what caught me off guard is, therefore, I thought every Christian in every church would be interested in this topic. Oh my goodness. And then over time, the seeker sensitive movement came in the 90s. I'm just writing an article on it. Seeker sensitive came in the 90s and said, we don't make anyone uncomfortable, and talking about the rapture will make people uncomfortable. Are you kidding me? But that is what some pastors were saying some 25, 30 years ago. And this seemed to almost be a cancer that spread and spread and spread. And pretty soon the message that I'm trying to give out, people are closed. My pastors are certainly closed to it. And the people are so frustrated, are so lonely, are so alienated, and so lacking in good fellowship and good teaching. All of this, sort of this decline in the fact that the king is coming, that we should all be so excited about, suddenly is bad news. It's not going to grow the church. Tom, you're a pastor. Has your church grown because you're focusing on current events? Has it grown? I know it has.
Yeah. The church, I mean, the attendance is definitely not a problem. And I think what it is God will bring the people to that church. You know, Jack would be a perfect example.
Right.
God will bring the people to that church that is where the pastor is faithful to teach the word of God and the truth, because his people that he's calling want to know that. So he'll direct them there. On the flip side of it, sure, other churches are growing too that refuse to teach these things. Well, what we have happening is I think we have two different churches that are taking place, a
Yeah.
real church and a fake church.
Good point. Good point.
And there is definitely a separation of what's taking place between the two. I liken everything that you're talking about to 2 Timothy chapter 4. You know, Billy Crone has mentioned this many times. He does such a great job of explaining that passage where in the last days, people will raise up for themselves teachers who to itch their
Right.
ears, not teaching the truth, but bringing fables. That describes the church in the Western world right now, where the people they just want to feel good.
Exactly.
So bring up and you know what, the seminaries crank out the teachers to just make the people feel good, not willing to bring the truth because, well, quite frankly, the truth offends. And
Absolutely. And I think the fact that the king is coming is ultimate truth. And I think it has become the ultimate offense in the church. And I think that was my point. I never thought I'd see the day where the good news that Jesus is coming any day would become bad news and would become, my pulpit can't go there because we won't have church growth. Are you kidding me? But that is exactly what's happening. I didn't think I'd see this in my lifetime, particularly having grown up from 13 years old on being told this is the most glorious news there is, and it is. And this will transform your life and it'll make you, here's the key, it'll turn you into a soul winner. And my goodness, the fact that we may be running out of time is the greatest evangelistic tool known to man.